I'm 53. My name's Rachel. For most of my life, I played by the rules, married young, raised 2 kids, hosted dinner parties, smiled when I didn't feel like smiling. I believed that if you did things the right way, you'd be rewarded with love, stability, maybe even a little joy. But over time, love started feeling more like a quiet routine than a warm fire. I kept telling myself that was normal, that real love isn't supposed to feel electric forever. And maybe that's true. But what happened that day, I never saw it coming, and it changed something deep inside me. Please, don't make the same mistake I did. It had been a frustrating morning. My car wouldn't start, of course, and Mike, my husband, was already at work. He'd left in such a hurry he barely even kissed me goodbye. I had a dentist appointment across town, so I called a cab, which said 20 minutes, but it was already pushing 35. The late April air was warm with a soft breeze, and I stood at the edge of the parking lot outside the pharmacy, shifting from foot to foot, wishing I'd worn flats instead of these silly wedges. That's when a sleek silver Lexus pulled up beside the curb. The window rolled down, and there he was, David Whitmore, my husband's boss. Sharp as ever in his gray button-up, tie loosened just slightly, sunglasses perched on his head. He had that relaxed confidence that always made me feel just a little bit self-conscious, like he saw more than he let on. "Rachel?" he said, his voice smooth but surprised. "Everything okay?" I blinked. "Oh, hi, Mr. Whitmore. I'm just waiting for a cab. My car wouldn't start this morning." He laughed softly and shook his head. "Call me David, please. You waiting out here all alone? Hop in. I'll take you." "Oh, I couldn't. Really. You're probably busy. I don't want to trouble you." "It's no trouble. I'm headed that direction anyway." He smiled, tilting his head toward the passenger door. Besides, I'd never forgive myself if I left Mike's wife stranded in the Rite Aid parking lot. I hesitated, just long enough for him to add, "Come on, I promise not to quiz you about quarterly reports." That made me laugh. Against my better judgment, or maybe just against my usual judgment, I opened the door and got in. The car smelled faintly of cedarwood and something citrusy. Clean, calm, masculine. As we pulled onto the road, he glanced at me and said, "You don't look like someone who's just going to the dentist." I smirked. What does that mean? "I don't know. There's just something thoughtful in your eyes, like your head's somewhere else." I didn't answer right away. My fingers traced the stitching on the seat. "I guess. I've been doing a lot of thinking lately," I said softly. He nodded, not pushing, just letting the silence settle. The way he drove was unhurried, fluid, like he wasn't in a rush to be anywhere, and that alone felt like such a luxury. With Mike, it was always about getting from A to B, no pauses, no questions. After a few minutes, he asked, "How's Mike doing? He's been buried in that big presentation all week." I nodded. "Yeah, he's been really focused. We haven't talked much lately, just passing each other in the hallway mostly." David made a small sound, not quite agreement, not quite surprise. "It happens," he said. "Life has a way of shrinking things down to routines. You wake up one day and realize you're not even sure what the person next to you dreams about anymore." I turned to look at him. The way he said that, it wasn't flirty, not overtly. But it wasn't nothing either. It felt knowing. "Is that what happened to you?" I asked before I could stop myself. He didn't answer right away. His hands stayed steady on the wheel. "Yeah," he said finally. "That's exactly what happened to me. We fell into another silence, but it wasn't uncomfortable. If anything, it felt strangely intimate, like we'd both confessed something without saying much at all. The light at the next intersection turned red, and the car slowed. We were just a few minutes from the dentist's office when he glanced over and said something that stopped my breath. "You know, Rachel, I've always wondered something about you." I turned my head, my heart suddenly beating a little too hard in my chest. "What's that?" He looked at me with a softness that made my throat tighten. "What it would be like to talk to you when you're not just Mike's wife." The light turned green. He drove on like nothing had happened, but something inside me shifted. A crack opened, just a small one, but I felt it. And I knew I'd never look at that moment the same way again. I didn't speak for the rest of the ride. I couldn't. My hands were clasped together tightly in my lap, fingers digging into each other. I stared up the window, pretending to be interested in the street signs, the rows of dogwood trees, the jogger crossing the sidewalk. But all I could hear was his voice. "I've always wondered what it would be like to talk to you when you're not just Mike's wife." The words echoed in my mind, soft but weighty, like the slow creak of a door opening to a room I didn't know existed. Or maybe didn't want to admit I'd noticed before. When he pulled into the parking lot of the dental office, he didn't put the car in park right away. He turned slightly in his seat, one arm resting casually over the steering wheel. "Do you want me to wait? I don't have any meetings until after lunch." I looked at him, really looked, and saw something there I didn't expect. Not pressure, not some flirtatious smirk, just patience, presence, like he genuinely didn't mind. "No, it's okay," I said, trying to keep my voice even. "You've already gone out of your way." "Thank you, David. Really." He nodded, but didn't move. His eyes lingered on mine for just a beat longer than they should have. Then he said, "Well, if you ever need a ride, or just someone to talk to who doesn't see you through Mike's eyes, you know how to reach me." Then he smiled, that small half-smile of his that somehow felt more honest than most full ones, and he was gone. The appointment blurred by. I couldn't tell you what the hygienist said or what the dentist found. My mouth was open, but my thoughts were somewhere else entirely. That night, I cooked dinner like always. Grilled chicken, rice pilaf, roasted asparagus. Mike came home late, loosened his tie, kissed my cheek absently, and went straight to his laptop on the kitchen island. He didn't ask about my day. He didn't even notice I'd dressed a little nicer than usual. As we ate, I watched him. I saw the lines on his forehead, the way he chewed without looking up from his email. I remembered a time when I used to know what he was thinking before he said it. Now, I couldn't have guessed if he was tired, anxious, or just indifferent. After the kids left home, we promised we'd reconnect. Take weekend trips. Find each other again. But somehow, we'd settled into parallel routines. Peaceful, polite, but distant. I don't know what made me do it. Curiosity, maybe, or loneliness. But around 10 o'clock, I picked up my phone and sent a simple text. "Thank you for the ride today. You caught me on a day when I really needed someone to see me." I stared at it for a full minute before I hit send. I wasn't expecting a reply, not really. But one came less than 5 minutes later. "You have no idea how many times I've wanted to say that to you." I'm glad I did. I sat there on the edge of the bed, phone in hand, staring at the screen. I felt like a teenager again, flushed, nervous, slightly ashamed, but unable to stop the way my heart fluttered. I could have ended it there, said goodnight, closed the door on it. But instead, I replied, "Why didn't you ever say something before?" Another pause. This one longer, Then, because I respected Mike, and I still do. But today, I saw you standing there, and you looked so alone. I couldn't ignore it anymore. I turned off the lamp, slipped under the covers next to my sleeping husband, and stared at the ceiling. That last message sat like a weight on my chest, not heavy in a cruel way, but undeniable. He had seen me, not as an accessory to someone else, not as a background character, just me. And somehow that felt more intimate than anything physical ever could. As I lay there in the quiet darkness, I knew that something had shifted, not in a reckless, dramatic way, but quietly, like a train switching tracks deep underground. Nothing looked different from the surface, but everything was about to change. The next few days passed like they always did: laundry, grocery runs, a call with my daughter about her job in Dallas, and Mike working late more often than not. But I moved through it all with this undercurrent humming beneath my skin, like I was carrying a secret I hadn't fully unpacked yet. I didn't message David again, not right away, but I thought about it, more than I wanted to admit. Then Friday morning came. I was in the kitchen, pouring coffee, when Mike called from the hallway. "Hey, Ratch, we've got that benefit dinner tonight at the Sheraton. Whitmore's whole team will be there. You still up for it?" I paused mid-pour. "You didn't tell me it was tonight." "I'm sure I did," he said absently, already distracted by something on his phone. "Starts at 7. Shouldn't be a late one." I stared at him, this man I'd built a life with. Who could forget whole conversations? Who never noticed when I got my hair done? Who loved me in his way, but hadn't truly seen me in a long time? "I'll be ready," I said. I spent too long picking out a dress. Settled on a navy wrap-style one that hugged in the right places and made my eyes pop. I curled my hair, added a little shimmer to my cheekbones. When I walked down the stairs, Mike gave me a cursory nod. "You look nice," he said. "Grab your jacket. It might rain." At the dinner, the ballroom was filled with dark suits, polite laughter, and the gentle clink of silverware. I smiled through conversations, shook hands, made small talk with women I barely remembered meeting last year. Mike introduced me a few times, using that same phrase he always did: "This is my wife, Rachel." Not, "This is Rachel." Not, "Meet my partner, my friend." Just my wife. I spotted David across the room before he saw me. He was laughing at something the CFO said, one hand casually tucked into his pocket, but when his eyes landed on me, something shifted. His expression softened just for a second. He excused himself and walked over slowly. "Rachel," he said, "you look radiant tonight." I smiled and felt it reach my chest. "Thank you. You clean up well yourself." He chuckled, and for a moment we just stood there, letting the noise of the room fade into a quiet hum. "I wasn't sure you'd come," he said. I wasn't sure either. A pause, long enough to feel the tension thread itself between us again. Familiar now, not threatening, just undeniable. "Do you ever think," he said, keeping his voice low, "that you ended up in a life that looks fine from the outside, but doesn't really fit anymore?" My breath caught. "All the time," I whispered. His eyes searched mine. "Do you want it to fit again? Or are you just used to pretending it still does?" That question hit harder than I expected, because I didn't have an answer. Or maybe I did. I just wasn't ready to say it out loud. Before I could respond, Mike's voice cut through. "There you are. David, good to see you. Rachel, they're about to do the raffle thing. Come on." David stepped back, his face unreadable again. But just before he turned away, he said softly, "If you ever stop pretending, I'm still here." That night, back at home, Mike went straight to bed. He was asleep in minutes. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, wiping off my makeup slowly, staring at the woman in the reflection. Same face, same lines, same tired eyes. But something inside me had changed. I walked into the guest room, sat down on the edge of the bed where I used to fold laundry, and pulled out my phone. My fingers hovered over his name. I didn't know what I wanted from him. Maybe just a conversation where I wasn't invisible. I typed, "What you said tonight." It's been echoing in my head. A minute later, "You deserve to be more than someone's reflection. You still have time to find what's real." I closed my eyes and let those words settle. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring. But I knew pretending wasn't enough anymore. And maybe, for the first time in years, I was finally ready to be honest. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in the dark listening to the rhythm of Mike's breathing beside me, steady and unaware. My thoughts spiraled, quietly, but insistently, like waves reshaping the shore one hush at a time. By morning, something inside me had settled, not resolved exactly, but clear. Mike left early for a weekend strategy session with his team. He kissed the top of my head, told me to have a good day, and was gone before I could decide whether to stop him or say something meaningful. I wandered the house for a while, folded the laundry, watered the plants, put on music and turned it down low, like I was afraid of waking something fragile inside me. By noon, I was sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of tea going cold and David's message still open on my phone. "You still have time to find what's real." It was a strange thing, realizing how long I'd been living for everyone but myself. For the kids, for Mike, for the version of me the world expected. A polite wife with neat hair and reliable casseroles. A woman who smiled even when her heart felt miles away. At 2:17 p.m., I sent him a message. "Are you free to talk? Just talk. Nothing else." The reply came almost immediately. "I'm nearby. 15 minutes." I met him at a quiet little cafe just off Pine and 6th. It was the kind of place with chipped wood tables and handwritten chalkboard menus. No one would know us there. No one would care. He was already seated when I walked in, nursing an espresso and looking exactly like himself, calm, contained, but with those eyes that always seemed to see just a little deeper. "Hi," I said as I sat down. "Hi," he said back, his voice gentle. We didn't speak for a moment. The silence between us wasn't awkward. It was full of unsaid things. "I need to ask you something," I said finally. He nodded. "When you said I deserve more, were you just saying that to be kind, or because you feel something?" He looked at me then, really looked. "I said it because it's true, and because I do feel something, Rachel. I have for a while. But I've kept it buried because I didn't think it was my place." I felt a strange sense of grief rise up in my chest. Not grief for him. For me. For the years I had quietly accepted half-hearted affection and called it love. For the ways I'd convinced myself that quiet emptiness was just part of growing older. "I'm not the kind of woman who makes rash decisions," I said. "I won't blow up my life on a whim. But I can't unhear the things you've said. I can't unfeel what I felt that day in your car." His voice softened. "I'm not asking you to run away with me. I just want you to see yourself the way I see you." I looked down at my hands, hands that had held children, wiped tears, stirred 1,000 pots of soup. Hands that had given so much but rarely reached out for what I needed. I want that too, I said quietly. To be seen. We talked for over an hour, not about secrets, not about forbidden things, just about life, about how it had worn us down in quiet, unnoticed ways, about the moments we'd each lost ourselves. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, I stood to leave. David rose with me, but he didn't try to touch me. He just looked at me with that same calm steadiness. What happens now is entirely up to you, he said. That night, I didn't confess anything to Mike. I didn't throw down ultimatums. I simply sat him down at the kitchen table and asked the question I should have asked years ago. Do you still see me? He looked confused, tired, maybe a little afraid. What do you mean? I mean, I said, voice trembling, when you look at me, do you really see me? Or just the role I fill in your life? He didn't answer right away, and the fact that he had to think about it told me more than I needed to know. I'm not sure what comes next. I haven't made any dramatic decisions. There's no suitcase by the door, but something inside me has changed. Maybe it's just the beginning of an awakening, or maybe it's the quiet, honest ending of something that no longer fits. What I know with absolute certainty is this: I deserve to be seen. And for the first time in a long time, I believe I will be.